Coverage you can count on continues with Drew Blair.
Right-to-work legislation in Indiana could become law as soon as Wednesday. The Indiana Republican-dominated Senate could pass it early in the week, with Governor Daniels sure to sign it. But questions still linger about what the bill actually is and how it will affect people. Here to answer some of that is Andy Downs. He's a political professor at IPFW. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Just simply put, for anyone who's still confused about this, what is right-to-work?
We actually have to go way back in time. We have to go back into the early 1900s when unions were beginning to form. And one of the problems they noticed is that people were more than happy to make use of the services, representation and bargaining, those sorts of things, but didn't want to pay the fees. A lot of people refer to this as a free rider problem, and we see it in other areas. So legislation was passed that said that if any company enters into a collective bargaining agreement with employees in a particular union, then all the employees have to become members of that union. Well, as you might imagine, there were some people who thought that was unfair because they didn't think everyone should have to join a union if they don't want to. So in the 1940s, a piece of legislation was passed that said that individual states can decide for themselves whether they want to mandate union membership or whether they want to be a, quote, right-to-work state. And so Indiana is going to be probably the 23rd state that will actually allow for right-to-work, which means if you go to work for an employer that has a collective bargaining agreement with a union, you will not be required to join that union unless you want to do so.
Okay, so if this happens as it is expected to do, how will it really affect people? Is it only going to affect those in unions?
Yeah, this will not, for folks who are not working for an employer where there's a union representation or they're not a member of a union already, they'll have almost no effect on them. And I've heard different numbers. I haven't gone out to look them up, but it's somewhere around like 10 to 15% of the population in Indiana are employed in union facilities or union members. So there's really a very large percentage of people who will not notice this at all.
We've heard a lot of opinions on this over the last few weeks. Why do supporters of right-to-work think it's right for Indiana?
What's interesting about the argument is both sides have some very good data, very compelling data that says it's either good or bad. And so in some respects it becomes a philosophical argument, but for those who are supporting right-to-work, what they argue is that there are businesses that have chosen to not locate in Indiana because of the lack of right-to-work legislation. And then they'll also point to some other issues, like in some instances lower unemployment or other economic indicators that say right-to-work is the way to go. The opposition has data that says no, actually right-to-work's not good because there are usually lower wages. So there's a bit of a trade-off, and in some respects it's a philosophical argument.
What lasting effects do you see from this? Is there anything to learn from the other states who are already there?
Obviously, both groups have gone to other states and said, okay, tell us what the effect has been in your state. And that's where the data, they're collecting all the data that says it's good and it's bad. So we really will have to wait and see. What I'm pretty sure of is that certainly by November, this is not going to disappear as a campaign issue. And when it comes to the next set of elections, whether that's in another 2 years or 4 years, this will keep coming up. Indiana actually passed right-to-work legislation in 1957. It was held up in court, was not viewed as very effective, and it was actually overturned or repealed in 1965. So obviously, if it passes this session, there are going to be a lot of people who will be calling out 1965 as a rallying cry for them.
Interesting stuff. Andy, thanks for putting it all out there for us.
My pleasure.